Coming up next, he was the last musical icon you'd ever associate with a violent tirade. I mean, he had golly-gee looks and a squeaky-clean persona, but even this legend had a temper that could flare up unexpectedly. His famous marriage went through a series of separations and unimaginable ups and devastating lows. It was such an enduring relationship that he wrote what many feel is the GOAT, G-O-A-T, of love songs. One of the most magical and poignant songs of the time. But in the end, the song couldn't save the marriage. It ended in a brutal divorce that got so bad, at one point, the Boy Scout took a chainsaw to their king-size bed. It's a sad story, but an inspiring story, and one that's just about as real as life can get. Coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists, the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember using the good old rotary phone to make a phone call, you're gonna dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the big red button and click the notification bell so you always know when our latest and greatest are coming out. We have some great interviews coming. We also have a Patreon, and we also have our merch below that helps us to do more interviews and keep it a daily channel. So I got a little question for you. It goes along with today's song, a little bit with our story. How do you really know when you're in love? I mean, for most, it's all about what happens to the senses. Colors become more vivid. The air feels more exhilarating. Food tastes more savory. And songs seem to speak to us all that we may have never heard in the same way before. I mean, lyrics we've heard 100 times suddenly have a deeper purpose, and it's like we finally understand the meaning in some way. Well, John Denver experienced similar out-of-body elation when his relationship with his wife, Annie, was re-energized after they had a brief separation. Let me explain. His senses were overwhelmed by the scenic beauty around him. And suddenly, with a restoration of love, everything seemed right in his world. The inspiration compelled him to write a love letter to his wife. It became one of the most beloved songs of all time, there's no question. Annie's song.
You fill up my senses.
Annie's song was written for John Denver's then wife, Annie Martell. As with much of Denver's music, he intertwines his romantic love with the beauty of nature, his love of nature. So he was on a ski lift, get this, high above the Colorado Rockies when he penned the track, which explains the song's vivid scenic imagery. You fill up my senses like a night in a forest, like the mountains in springtime, like a walk in the rain.
Like a walk in the rain.
Like a storm in the desert, like a sleepy blue ocean. I mean, it's jukebox poetry.
Like a sleepy blue ocean.
John and Annie, they just patched things up after an emotional separation. So he's skiing. It was one of his favorite pastimes when the inspiration for the song just came to him. And a rush of the senses. Now, John had just finished an exhilarating run. He skied down to the lift, got on the chair, and ascended the mountain again. His thighs were burning as he caught his breath. This is how he explains it. He was gazing out at the mountains that he loved. He marveled at the unique blue of the Colorado sky, which was his favorite color. I mean, to hear John Denver explain this, it's almost as poetic as the song itself. He talks about the deep green of the trees against the white snow and the vibrant outfits of his fellow skiers. The sounds of life as the lift moved over each tower, the birds were singing, the laughter and the smell of clean, fresh air in the wilderness. All of these sensations, they just penetrated his soul. It was all just beautiful, breathtaking. It filled him completely.
Fill me again.
John began thinking about other things that fulfilled him completely. And of course, his first thought was of his Annie, the woman he'd fallen in love with all over again. Then he considered the beauty of nature. And in the few minutes it took to ride from the bottom of the Bell Mountain lift to the top, John wrote Annie's song. He wrote it on the chairlift in the middle of nature. The melody came to him instantly, and he envisioned the chords on the guitar in his mind. After skiing down the hill, he raced home and he picked up his guitar and he just got it all down. Just like that. John Denver. Now, during her college years, Annie Martell crossed paths with an emerging star named John Denver, who was, his real name was Harry John Duchendorf Jr. At the beginning of his illustrious music career, John performed at a local venue near the college where the two met. They were going to college and connection was immediate. They quickly formed a deep bond. Annie and John's relationship flourished, and they tied the knot on June 9, 1967. Their wedding was a charming, intimate affair that marked the beginning of a new chapter for both of them. Annie's support was crucial in John Denver's early career, giving him the emotional stability that he needed to thrive in the dog-eat-dog music industry. He talks about it in his memoirs. John's career was skyrocketing. He had hits like Take Me Home Country Roads and Rocky Mountain High. It was catapulting him to stardom. Throughout his rise to fame, Annie was right there by his side, offering unwavering support. They moved to Aspen in '71, a place they considered heaven on earth. They also adopted 2 children. There was a son named Zachary and a daughter named Anna Kate.
Rocky Mountain High.
Now, their marriage faced its fair share of challenges. The pressures of John's growing career, and there was the constant media attention that often took a toll on their relationship. And a few years after they moved to Colorado, Annie and John separated. It was a very difficult time for both of them. John Denver was miserable without Annie. She was more than just a supportive spouse, she was his muse. When they reconciled their renewed relationship, it breathed new life into him, into his writing. Annie's song, he wrote that to express his heartfelt love and appreciation for his wife, and it became one of the most inspired songs that he ever created.
Let me always be with you.
John was excited to include Annie's song as a cut on his top-selling album Back Home Again in the summer of 1974. On the recording, John Denver provided vocals, and he played both the 6-string and 12-string acoustic guitars. John Summers played mandolin, David Jackson handled bass, Hal Blaine, the great Hal Blaine, was on drums, and Buddy Collette played clarinet. The song's beautiful orchestral arrangement was crafted by Lee Huldridge, an 18-time Emmy Award nominee and a 4-time Emmy winner.
Let me give my life to you.
As the lead single from Back Home Again, Annie's song became a beloved #1 single in 10 different countries, including Canada, the UK, Ireland, and John's second #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 here in the States. It also topped the Billboard Adult Contemporary chart that year, during a time when John Denver was one of the most popular singer-songwriters. Won singles after Annie's song. There was Thank God I'm a Country Boy, and there was I'm Sorry in 1975. And I bring up I'm Sorry because that was another song that John wrote specifically for Annie.
I'm sorry for all the lies I told you.
The issues that led to their first separation, they came crashing back around creating a new friction in their marriage. As the lead single from John's 9th album, Windsong, I'm Sorry was a deeply emotional and regretful song about a relationship that was falling apart. Man, it's a song that's full of sorrow over John's floundering private life and a self-pity about his wife on the verge of leaving him. And there were great lines like, our friends all ask about you and I say you're doing fine.
Almost every day.
I expect to hear from you almost any time, but they all know I'm crying and I can't sleep at night. They all know I'm dying down deep inside.
I'm sorry for myself.
It's definitely one of John Denver's most personal songs. It's clear that Annie, as his long-suffering wife, had given him an ultimatum leading to a potential divorce. Yet he still hoped she'd reach out, forgive him for his mistakes, and take him back. John composed another song directed to his turbulent marriage and also his feelings of remorse with the song Fly Away, his last big hit single. Fly Away was a tearjerker, amplified by the touching background vocals by Olivia Newton-John.
Fly away.
Just moving poetry in this song. All of her days have gone soft and cloudy. All of her dreams have gone dry. All of her nights have gone sad and shady. She's getting ready to fly. Just poignant song.
She's getting ready to fly.
Now, back to Annie's song. On paper, it may seem like an odd choice, but Annie's song has become a tradition at Sheffield United Football Club in England. Start of each half of the game, the first few lines of the song are played for the home crowd. The fans then join in singing along with modified lyrics to relate to their team. Annie's song has been featured in a lot of pop culture. There's Christine, 2016 Kingsman, The Golden Circle in 2017, and the half of it in 2020. One of the most memorable scenes featuring Annie's song is in the movie, the 1997 rom-com My Best Friend's Wedding, where Julianne and Michael are having a serious conversation. And all the while, three young boys are having fun inhaling helium from a tank that was meant for balloons.
Mountains in springtime.
In 2000, if you remember this, Chad Lowe, Rob Lowe's brother, he portrayed John Denver, and Kristen Davis was cast as Annie in the Hallmark movie Take Me Home, the John Denver Story. Find that on YouTube. Annie's song was played during an emotional montage showing the growing disharmony in their marriage. Kind of a cheesy biopic, but worth a watch.
Like a walk in the rain.
Unfortunately, despite Annie's song being an international hit and selling almost 2 million copies, the rekindled love that it symbolized, it couldn't save John and Annie's marriage. The couple's marriage began to terminally unravel in the early 80s. The pressures of John's career, coupled with his extramarital affairs, just strained their relationship for good. Although John Denver's mellow music gave the impression that he was easygoing in real life, the breakdown of his first marriage revealed a little bit of a different side. He had a major temper. He was a bit of a hothead. When his temper got the best of him, it flared violently, leading to abusive behavior. During the process of dividing their shared property, John nearly choked Annie Martell in a fit of rage. And probably the most infamous incident is when John Denver used a chainsaw, revved that thing up to cut the bed that they once shared as a couple. He cut it straight in half. Rumor has it that John always hated that headboard.
I never in my wildest dreams imagined it.
In the end, though, unfortunately, Annie did fly away, just as John had predicted in his song of the same name. In 1982, after 15 years of marriage, Annie and John divorced. The split was an extremely difficult time for both of them. Scarred by emotional and logistical challenges,
Love is still the only dream I know.
in a candid interview for the documentary John Denver Country Boy, Annie reflected on their divorce, acknowledging that they were too young and really unprepared to handle the sudden fame and all of its pressures. John, in his own interviews, also admitted that his demanding career was a major factor in their separation. Now, despite their divorce, both Annie and John remained dedicated to their children, ensuring they were loved and well cared for. The period marked significant personal growth for Annie as she navigated life after the divorce, while really staying focused on her family.
Some days a stone.
With no hint of bitterness, Annie often talks about her time with John Denver with a blend of fondness and really reflection. Even though they faced their share of adversity, she remembers the joy and the love that they shared. I mean, in interviews, she's mentioned how John's music was a constant in their lives, helping them connect and really express their feelings to one another. And sadly, John's tragic death in a plane crash on October 12, 1997 was a crushing loss for his family and for us as fans. But his music and his message continue to resonate.
The time makes me high.
Now, as of 2024, Annie Martell lives in Aspen, Colorado. Now in her late 70s, she enjoys a peaceful life surrounded by family and close friends. She's also become really active in various charitable causes, especially those related to education and the environment, of course, reflecting the values that she shared with her once husband, John. Annie makes occasional public appearances and participates in interviews where she shares her experiences and her thoughts about her life with John Denver. Her insights, they offer a really valuable perspective on the ups and downs of being married to a famous person and the resilience that's needed to move on after a high-profile divorce in the papers, John Denver is the artist that many love, but are sometimes just too cool to admit, right? Some call them a guilty pleasure or guilty pleasure music. And I think that's horse crap. John Denver had one of the purest and most poignant singing voices ever. His songs have lasted for decades and will last for centuries. He wrote true standards of the Great American Songbook. John Denver got the awards and the hit singles and the adoration from his fans, but I don't believe that he ever got the respect he deserved from his peers for a large part. There was a time that Charlie Rich dissed John Denver when he won the CMA Award for Entertainer of the Year. Remember, this happened, I think it was October of '75. Charlie Rich, who had the crossover hits, The Most Beautiful Girl in the World, Behind Closed Doors.
To see the most beautiful girl in the world.
He was up there to announce the winner of the CMA's biggest prize. He'd actually won it the year before, Entertainer of the Year. And then a strange thing happened. He opened up the envelope and he saw the winner's name. Instead of announcing the winner as John Denver, though, and giving him the award like you're supposed to do, Charlie reached into his pocket and he got out a cigarette lighter and he lit the envelope on fire right in front of everybody. Though it shocked the live audience in attendance and those watching, John Denver, he was present only via satellite link-up, and he offered a gracious acceptance speech, and he had no clue what had just happened. In the aftermath, Charlie Rich was blacklisted from all award shows forever after that. I mean, what was Charlie thinking? It was assumed at the time that Rich was taking a stand on the side of country traditionalists. He was upset at the middle-of-the-road pop country crossover artists of that time. I mean, Olivia Newton-John, for example, had won the most promising female vocalist award. But then again, Charlie Rich was often accused of being not country enough as well. Now, the newspapers and the shows at the time suggested that he specifically resented John Denver's win. But, also come to find out, Charlie Rich was on a combination of prescription pain medication and gin and tonics that very night. Now, whatever it was, John Denver did not deserve Charlie's vitriol.
Mr. John Denver.
No guilty pleasure about it. John Denver frickin' rules. Annie's song started as a love song. John, he wrote it for his wife. But Annie noted that it became something more profound for him. It turned into sort of a personal prayer for John Denver. As we know, celebrities, they're as human as the common folk, all the foibles and pitfalls that everybody faces. John Denver wasn't a perfect man. He knew that he made mistakes, and songs like Annie's song and I'm Sorry demonstrate that he recognized the hurt that he brought on someone that he truly loved, cared about, that he cherished. Annie isn't mentioned by name in the lyrics of Annie's song, but the song has been dedicated to a lot of Annies around the world and people that aren't named Annie. Its universal appeal has made it a popular choice for weddings, one of the most popular wedding songs of all time, devoted to women everywhere. Like I said, regardless of their name. I did want to say, John Denver's greatest hits has sold more than 20 million copies in the United States alone. That's Zeppelin and Beatles territory. It's still one of the largest selling albums in the history of RCA Records, and Elvis was on RCA. In her reflections, Annie Martel often emphasizes how her late ex-husband's work continues to inspire new generations. She said, and I quote, "John's music was about more than just entertainment. It was about connecting with people in the world around us. Yes, just like a night in the forest, the mountains in springtime, or a walk in the rain. I'll say it, the music of John Denver, it will continue to fill our senses over and over again for the rest of time." Comment about John Denver and Annie's song. And I'll tell you, there's so many people out there that are closet John Denver fans. Get out of the closet. There's no reason to be in the closet. John Denver's amazing. Let's have a great discussion about John Denver, about his songs. What do you think about Annie's song? What do you think about his catalog? Guilty pleasure or not, let's have a great discussion below. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We would love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth.